welcome to the Driven Career Podcast. This is a space where we talk about professional life and personal development to inspire you to overcome the challenges and grow in your career. And today, I'm very excited. We have Armin Layegh. He is a talent acquisition expert, also based here in Vancouver, Canada. And we are going to dive into a conversation where we talk about how driven professionals, can be prepared for the changing job market. And a little bit about our episode. Here, we are going to also talk about what successful professionals do differently and how you can stand out in this fast-changing work environment. Armin also gives us some practical tips on how you can leverage the use of AI and building the habits needed to grow into top roles. Well, I can't wait to share this episode with you. Let's go to the episode. Hi, Armin. I'm so happy to have you here today. How are you?
Oh, thank you, Rachel. I'm doing great. Really looking forward to our conversation.
Oh my God, I am looking so much for our conversation. I know we have so many interesting things to talk about, and I am sure that our listeners will be so excited to hear all the things, the expertise you have to share with us. And
Thank you.
speaking about that, let's start from your introduction. Can you just give us a little brief of who you are and what do you do?
Of course, I'll be more than happy to. But before I do that, I just was going to mention, can you believe we have known each other for almost 5 years?
I know. It is
I love
crazy.
it. Is crazy. But listen, I really appreciate you sharing your platform and giving me an opportunity to help professionals navigate today's employment landscape and career growth strategies. So as you mentioned, I'm Armin Layegh, specializing in talent acquisition and management. My focus is on acquisition, retention, succession, and attrition of talent, which sounds like a law firm, but it is actually the core of building and supporting great teams. Um, Over the years, I've helped companies from fast growing tech startups to established enterprise build high performing teams. And my work really revolves around identifying what makes a great hire and how professionals can position themselves for long term success, both professionally and personally. Um, I found Scalable HR, but almost 8 years ago, actually, where we started leveraging a persona and a skill-based, data-driven, AI-powered approach to talent acquisition. Um, I started Scalable HR after working with a number of great global companies and noticing a shared challenge, and that was really on the talent acquisition and management side. It didn't matter which organization I was working with, talent acquisition and management was always the top challenge that they were facing. So we decided that we don't want to just match candidates to job descriptions. Instead, let's focus on helping companies rethink hiring strategies to attract the right talent for their organizations. Really, at the end of the day, my goal is to bring effective strategies to organizations of all sizes in a cost-effective way. Um, but to your point earlier, hiring is evolving fast, and I'm excited to share practical insights to help professionals stay ahead.
Yeah, there's so many things happening right now. It's like the world is really changing. And yeah, that's why I'm very excited because I know you've been working with this for so long now. You have been following all the advancements, all the trends. So yeah, you're the best person to share
Oh,
much more about it today with us. So,
thank you.
yeah, so I know you've worked with so many companies. Your profile just lists like a bunch of companies out there. That's a great experience. And throughout your experience, what patterns do you see in the professionals who successfully navigate and grow in these fast-paced environments? What do you think, in your opinion, Armin? What sets them apart?
Yes, that's a great question, Rachel. First of all, we have to, I think, recognize that successful companies thrive because of their successful professionals. Um, that's key to the success of any organization. And the most successful professionals share a long list of key traits. So let's start off with um, number one, the most important one. I think they all have a clear definition of success. They know what success means to them and adapt that definition as their career evolves over time. Interestingly enough, I recently listened to a podcast hosted by Eric Zimmer called The One You Feed. And the episode is called Redefining Wealth, The Truth About Money and Happiness. And the guest was the writer Sahil Bloom. Um, this podcast talks about how we define success for ourselves and help us avoid the trap of more while understanding the power of enough. So I would highly recommend to your listeners to check it out when they get a chance. Uh,
Amazing.
yeah, the second most important trait I think is the belief in mentorship and positive influence. Um,
Yes.
yeah,
Yes.
I think it's so underrated because so many of us are introverts and we don't want to go out there and put ourselves out there and let others know that we need their help. But to me, having a mentor that we trust and look up to and surround ourselves with people that share positivity are very important. Uh, I'll give you a bit of a story on this. So my mentor, as you may know, is Steve Cadigan, and he played a pivotal role in scaling LinkedIn about a decade and a half ago. And I'm ever so grateful for having him in my life as my mentor because really he directed my professional path. And when I look at where he is today, I always see myself a few years behind him because I'm continuously trying to mimic what he has done and what made him successful. And he teaches me as well, which I'm again very grateful for. Um, so this is a shout out to Steve for being in my life. Um, and also having influencers. We talked about positive influencers. My biggest influences are number one, my wife, my parents, and my children. They all keep me grounded and truly are my cheerleaders, if that makes sense.
Yes.
Um, the the other trait that I think a lot of high fast growing professionals have in their lives is they have integrity and principles. They operate with strong moral and ethical standards, really unwavering. They're focused and disciplined. They maintain a clear focus on their goals and act without delay. Really, the term later is not part of their vocabulary. Um, to give you a bit of a story on this one as well, I just recently listened to a podcast that was hosted by Jay Shetty, and it's called the Scarcity Belief That's Blocking You from Making Money and How to Feel Rich Even When You're Broke. And this podcast greatly showcases how the later mentality, when we always say, "Oh, you know what? I'll do it later. I'll do this tomorrow." Um, this podcast showcases how the later mentality can, in fact, harm us from seizing the moment of success. And I think that's a very important trait that a lot of professionals, high performing professionals, adhere to. Um, the other piece that I think is very important as a trait to have is uh, being adaptable and a strong believer in continuous learning. Um, these folks embrace change, new technology, and evolving market conditions. They don't just sit there still; they evolve with it. Um, just a quick question for you, Rachel. Did you ever get a chance to watch the HBO series called Billions?
What's the name again?
Billions.
No, I have not.
Okay.
Tell me
No,
about
that's
it.
okay. I would highly recommend both you and the listeners, if they haven't watched it, to watch it. In the show, there's a main character by the name of Bobby Axelrod, and he thrives due to adaptability and strategic thinking. Now,
Mm.
he's not a kind character in the show, but one that by watching him, we get to understand how we need to be adaptable and be a strategic thinker and not be overwhelmed by every little thing that happens in our lives. So if you get a chance, please do watch that the HBO series Billions. Um, the professionals who successfully navigate and grow are also very resilient. Um,
Yeah.
they handle setbacks and challenges with perseverance. They don't just give up. Think of them as a career version of those inflatable punching bags. You can knock them down, but they bounce right back up, and that's what I think they are. Um, I've noticed that they make long-term commitments and they stay dedicated to their goals and principles. They proactively problem solve. They take initiatives and find solutions rather than waiting for directions to be given to them. Here's another movie reference. Have you watched The Social Network by any chance?
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. One of my favorites. And really, this movie is all about the founders of Facebook,
Mm-hmm.
and it's a great example of relentless problem solving and career breakthroughs. Um, Great movie, great production for sure.
I'll
Um,
be listing all of this here in our description. I think it's going to be easier for our listeners to go straight forward to the
for
links. That's
sure.
great. That's great. Thanks for sharing all this.
Of course, my pleasure. And uh, yeah, no, I'll send you the links as well if you need them. The other trait that I think is important to outline regarding successful professionals, they're collaborators and influencers. They build relationships and create impact beyond their job descriptions. They never
Yes.
say, well, this is out of my scope. I don't need to focus on that. This is what my role and responsibility is. No, they go above and beyond that. They have built a very strong personal brand by establishing credibility through visibility, be it on LinkedIn or within their own industries through associations, etc. But they always try to market themselves because nobody else is really uh, as impactful of a marketer for successful professionals as they are for themselves. They know themselves better. Um, Another key trait is they share their knowledge. Um, they believe in teaching others and sharing insights rather than fearing competition. They don't hold information. They're always willing to share. And to me, that's a very important trait. Almost at the end of my list, um, they understand their limitations. They are more aware of their weaknesses than their strengths. And they take the time to work on those weaknesses and areas of development, if that makes sense. Um, they focus their energy strategically. They put their focus on efforts that they know they can control rather than stressing over what they can't. I mean, let's be honest, worrying about the stock market that changes every day, or your neighbor's barking dog isn't going to land us the next promotions that we might be after. So really bringing our focus into what can we control and what is outside of our control.
Oh my goodness. So good, Armin. Like I didn't want to interrupt you. As you were
Oh,
speaking, there are so many items here. I wish we could just like break down them, like and really unfold each one of them. But I will just summarize here and maybe you can help me to navigate on some of the topics you mentioned.
mhm,
I loved all the items you mentioned. They're all super important. Take note. Um, but definitely the mentorship, that is something that I have seen transforming my life as well. And being, as you said, being surrounded by people that inspire you or that keeps you on, ground and focused. That's so important. And
agree.
I have to say, I really love the last part, um, that successful people or very driven professionals, they don't feel threatened by others, right? They are willing and they're happy to share knowledge, because you and I, it's so good to talk to you because we're both from HR, and we know how toxic some workplaces can be, and that can happen. I know that a lot of professionals and very good professionals out there are facing this right now, and it is challenging when you are working with someone
Mhm.
or maybe a leader that sees you as a threat instead of, as an opportunity to share knowledge and share, just to with that mindset of helping others. I
Yes.
think that is it is sad when we see that some professionals they just feel threat and they don't share knowledge just because they think that somebody else doing better or being better than me is a threat,
Yeah.
opposing to connect with this person and learn with them and just grow together, right?
Yeah. It's interesting you mentioned that because my grandma used to say, we are born as teachers, right? It's when we look at everything that happens around us, every little thing, we're continuously learning from it. And as humans, through generations, we have been sharing stories. We have been telling each other what is right, what is wrong. We have written books on this topic. When you think about it from a teaching perspective, that's what our responsibility to the next generations is, right? It's about teaching each other, hey, you know what? You don't have to follow what I do or what I say, but
Mm-hmm.
this is what I did and what I said in the past, and this was the impact or the experience I had with it. Now, the person can do whatever they want to do with it after that, right? We can't control that piece of it, but I feel obligated that my success story as a human being is a story that needs to be shared with others so they can perhaps take that teaching and make it their own and then make it better. And really that's what's going to drive our world to a better place is through teaching our experiences to each other.
Yeah. And there is nothing better when you work with someone, when you have peers or leadership that they are willing to help, willing to teach. And
Agree.
as you mentioned, we need to be always aware of how we are portraying ourselves and building up our brand and our authority. And that is an opportunity for that, right? Because
Absolutely.
if you are sharing your knowledge, you are going to be recognized because not only because of your knowledge but because how team player you are. It's because of your willingness
Yep.
to share. You're just happy to help, and that's nothing better in the workplace than people like this, right?
100% agree. Yeah, absolutely.
I love that. Thank you. Well, we could
Thank
talk
you.
so much. Maybe we can do like a podcast number two. We can break down all of these items, but let's just dive in more into the aspects of the recruitment side now, because I
Of
know you have
course.
so much to talk about that as well. Um, so with the AI and automation transforming recruitment, these are the last trends we have seen. All of the beautiful tools that we have been able to use in our daily work in HR. But then when we think about the job seekers, Armin, how can ambitious professionals use these tools to their advantage? Like whether in job seeking or like we were saying, personal branding, career planning, what's the best way you would say that they could leverage their skills to match
Yeah.
the trends that we're going through nowadays?
Yeah, this is a topic that is so dear to me. I and I'll explain to you in a moment as to why that is. But I want to start off with the message that AI is an asset, is not a threat. When we look back, it's been around for decades. I mean, the original AI came to play about 30 years ago. But really, it's been the past couple of years that we have started to look at it as a tool used by general public, right? Which is, you know, just like everything else, all the new technologies, it comes across, it's scary, right? It's change. Um, but let's look back in the world of HR for a moment. When we look back at recruitment, for example, and I started in recruitment over 20 years ago. Again, thanks to Steve Cadigan for directing me into that field. But when I look back at my own history, we started with data collections and saving it into Excel spreadsheets, and then using whatever information, the data that we put into that Excel spreadsheet to find better people over time. And then that kind of moved into the applicant tracking system. I mean, you've used it as well, Rachel. The applicant tracking systems are intended to be a database of a lot of candidates that over time make our jobs a little bit easier to search for candidates in our own database, then reach out to them and call them. Well, there was a lot of automation that went into the applicant tracking system tool itself. Well, now we are here, which is AI generated candidate search functions. But you remember Boolean search, right? When we used to go to Google and do Boolean search.
Yeah.
Well, Yeah, exactly. Well, it really was the beginning of an AI-based search through the internet. And now we just have different tools that have come into play. In short, really AI is like having a really diligent but slightly overzealous assistant. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah.
You
Uh,
need to really use that properly. I think as much you learn using the tool, more you can leverage yourself with all the work you need to do nowadays. That's our assistant, right?
Absolutely, absolutely. So, going to your question about how professionals can leverage AI, um, I think AI is great. It's a fantastic tool for personal branding and job search. Um, think about it this way: it can optimize resumes, enhance LinkedIn profiles, and really tailor applications for each position that we apply to. So that would be number one. I also think that it's a fantastic tool for career planning. Um, let me explain. AI essentially can analyze the market trends and suggest high growth career paths and suggest fields that one may not necessarily have thought about in the past. So, to give you an example, LinkedIn recently is sending me a lot of information about um, getting into the sales field because as a talent acquisition specialist, a lot of what I do is essentially sales. And I'm selling positions and companies to candidates, and and I'm trying to sell the candidates to my clients or organizations that are recruiting. So really, it's starting to feel like it's finding those skill-based um, uh, traits of individuals and say, hey, have you ever thought about sales? The other uh, type of positions that I'm getting a lot of inquiries about is marketing. Well, again, as recruiters, as talent acquisition specialists, we really are marketers. So it's saying, hey, wait a minute, you have done this for companies when it comes to recruitment. Why don't you apply the same skills to marketing field? And here are some job opportunities. So we really need to start thinking about above and beyond what our titles say, really, and start looking at our skills and what is transferable, and can we essentially find a similar position in that field, or how do we monetize our skills with that regards. But most importantly, I think AI can help with interview preparations. AI-powered tools can simulate interviews and provide real-time feedback, and without judgment, right? So if our answer is not correct, they're not going to feel bad to say, "Hey, wait a minute, this is not a really good answer. Here's what a better answer would be." So for us to actually really take that and learn from it, uh, because who doesn't want to practice tough questions with a robot before facing a hiring manager or HR professional, right?
Yeah.
Um, does that make sense?
It makes sense. I like both. I like the option of having a robot because it's really, you know, there is no feelings, no hard feelings here. It's just rational. But
Yep.
at the same time, I also like to say that I still like the humanity part of um when I work with my mentees now. We use a lot of AI, but at the same time, we want to make sure that you are coming and bringing yourself in this interview. So there's so much information you can customize as you are preparing for an interview.
Yeah.
Let's take that as an example. But at the same time, it is much more important to bring yourself as well to this meeting because we are humans working together and there's so many traits. We'll get there, but
Oh yeah.
there's so many traits that are being evaluated as we are talking to when we are doing an interview.
Yeah, and there's something to be said about the human interaction piece, right? I mean that physical appearance, the gestures, the eyebrows going up or down. Of course, AI will never replace that.
Yeah.
Um, there's authenticity, but actually, speaking of authenticity, the one of the key key subjects I was going to talk about, the AI piece. Um, it will enhance your career, not misrepresent it. And I think it's that authenticity piece that I want to bring to the attention of the listeners as well. Be authentic when it comes to the use of AI. Don't just rely on it heavily to make something out of you or out of me that is not real. That is, it's eventually going to misrepresent. Actually, interesting enough, Rachel, I recently read a research by MIT Sloan, and in there they suggest that AI essentially complements human workers by
Oh, yeah.
enhancing our productivity and leveraging our human skills. Um, like empathy, creativity, and leadership, but it will never really replace us. Um, but to leave the listeners with the fear of AI, and not fearing AI, have you watched the movie Moneyball? Did you ever get a chance to watch that movie?
Yes.
Okay, well, that's a perfect example of how AI generated data driven decision making can really transform the hiring and the talent management piece. And it can do the same for individuals when it comes to leveraging AI for their benefits to enhance who they are, but not, again, not to misrepresent it.
I really like how AI can help us to predict some stuff, right? That I think
Mhm.
that's super helpful. But one thing that I like doing when I'm working with AI, I like to first of all take like my collect my thoughts and then I share with
Yeah,
AI just to see how am I doing and what can I extract. And as you said, how can we improve that? There's so many things that we don't see much about our own data, like when you share your LinkedIn profile and all the things that you have done in your career, let's say, we can put together most of them, but then it's way much better when AI tell you all the great things. I'm like, wow, yes,
I've done
that is
that.
right. I'm glad
100%.
you I'm glad you said that,
Yeah,
right? But I try to usually think about those things first before putting out there right away, because at the same time, I also want to be careful to not, yeah, just to not buy everything that it's saying. I really want to make sure that it's reliable, everything, because sometimes, of course, the robot is going to bring you some information that doesn't really make sense or doesn't really represent what you're trying to say. Yeah. So again,
yeah.
it's we are learning how to use the tool, but definitely I agree that's something that's it's going to be super helpful for all of us moving forward in so many different industries and aspects. It's just coming to
For
make our
sure.
lives easier.
For sure. And we have to remember we are also blind to our own successes, and we tend to underappreciate everything that we have done as professionals or even in personal lives. So really putting our LinkedIn profile, our resume into AI, be it Copilot or ChatGPT or Google Gemini, whatever it is, when we put that information in there cautiously, because we got to remember that it is that information is not held private, that it is public. Um,
Yes.
but when we do put that information in there, it is able to recognize some of the um, personality traits or professional achievements that we haven't really been talking about, right?
Yeah.
I mean, I look at my own LinkedIn profile just to give you an example and to kind of bring it home a little bit. When I inputted my information in there to enhance my LinkedIn profile, it really did bring up some really key experiences that I had overlooked because I was
Yes.
expecting people to already be aware just because I was telling them what my title or what my key responsibilities were. And that's really the moment that it shifted on LinkedIn for me, where I suddenly get opportunities in marketing and sales because I was able to translate what AI saw as my achievements and put those into my LinkedIn, and suddenly it says, hey, wait a minute, have you ever thought about this? Right? So again, proceed cautiously. It's not going to be private, it's always public. However, use it to your advantage, and don't be shy about it.
Totally, totally agree. Yeah, I think it's an amazing tool. We can definitely make a good use of that. And as we were talking about the skills, so That's so great. That also helps us with some awareness of, what we have been doing through our career. And, when you use AI to just help you to write down those things, it's beautiful layout out there, all the things you have done that you may overlook. But then when we talk about the skills, especially with the growing shift in the market towards the skills-based hiring, so just shifting more about the hiring portion now. I think nowadays you can agree with me that degrees and titles matter less than what someone can actually do. I think that's why a lot of people are doing. I think this is the time I've been seeing much more people transition through industries or type of work. As you mentioned, you've been working in HR for so long, but then AI see the potential that you could work with sales, we could work with marketing, like so many other things. So on that topic, how can a driven professional strategically showcase their skills, especially in the competitive and transitioning job market?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think degrees still have value, but I think we need to redefine the purpose as to what degrees and post-secondary education really is. Um, I'll give you an example. When somebody says, "Hey, Armin, you're a SFU graduate. Why did you get the degrees that you did, or why did you get the diplomas that you did from different places, or the certifications, etc.?" My answer is always, it was really for me to learn how to learn. That's why I went to post-secondary education. Um, that doesn't mean that everyone needs a university degree. Please don't take me wrong. I think trade school certifications and really specialized courses such as learning about Azure Cloud, those are just as valuable, right? But for me, the schooling environment and obtaining the degrees and the certificates and the licenses, that really solidified that I am a lifelong learner, if that makes sense, right? And I continue to do that. Um, you brought up the titles piece, and I completely agree with you. Um, I think today titles mean a lot less because over the past couple of decades, we went through this massive title inflation, right? Um, instead of I'll give you a quick example of this. I was working with a client looking to hire a VP of HR, and I interviewed a number of people, and truthfully, it was over 100. And a couple of questions that I asked them was, number one, talk to me about compliance laws, right? And then I asked them about have they experienced restructuring or not, and the candidate pool varied from very senior to people with a couple of years. And the senior people, I noticed they had advanced their career, the titles, based on the jobs that they had switched, right? So there was really no consistency with or the longevity with any one organization that they stayed at. And when I was asking them about the compliance laws and governance and HR related business strategies, they didn't have a whole lot of answers to give, right? Because really they went from being an HR generalist to a senior director of HR within a matter of couple of years because they switched jobs, and every job that they went to, it increased their title. To me, that's a title inflation. That's what that means. Um, does that make sense?
Yes, totally. Sorry, I was just putting my microphone on mute here.
No, no, no,
Uh,
that's okay. Yeah,
And Armin, just to add to that, it also ties to what we mentioned at the beginning about that awareness, what successful means to you. Because, some professionals, they're really looking just into the title. But as you said, sometimes that title, it's not really represent all the knowledge and everything that you can bring at the table.
yeah, yeah, exactly, exactly. So, 100% agree with you. And going back to the title piece, I would encourage professionals to, instead of relying on job titles, they focus on um, networking beyond just a job application. I encourage professionals to connect directly with hiring managers and showcase their skills. And whenever possible and if appropriate, try to bypass HR and recruiters because the HR and recruiters, they tend to be the gatekeepers, and they may not necessarily always have the all the information that they need about the job, the organization, the hiring manager's needs. So really connect with those decision makers, the hiring managers or the senior executive team members, to get a good insight of what it is that they're looking for, and then be realistic and say, do I have what it takes? Right. So that would be my number one, uh, not advice, but from based on the experience. Um, I also encourage professionals to really be showing rather than telling. Um, so what I mean by that is, you know, build portfolios, create your LinkedIn content, contribute to open source projects if possible, write articles, opinions for newspapers, magazines, whatever it is, but really showcase yourself and don't just tell. Um, an important piece would be really leveraging micro credentials. So what I mean by that is, you know, certifications from platforms like Coursera, LinkedIn Learning, and even Google. They can really demonstrate expertise over time because the reader will see that you have invested a lot of time in a certain field. And yes, you may not necessarily have the degree, but really you have learned, right? And who can forget job experience, right? I mean, there's nothing better than having been there, done that,
Yes.
been put through major changes within any organization to demonstrate that I am ready for any challenge that's being thrown at me. To give you an example, when I look back at my own history, I've been so blessed and fortunate for the past, 25 years almost, to work with organizations that were pioneers in technology, but more importantly, they also failed as organizations. And subsequently, I started to learn, hey, you know what? Businesses are just like humans, right? They succeed, they fail, they do great at some points, but they do less great at other points. But really, for me, those are valuable lessons where it allowed me to be part of organizations that were acquired. So what did that acquisition involve? We were the acquirees, so we went and acquirers, where we went and acquired companies. So now I was responsible to bring in that talent into our organization and help them grow within the culture of our company. So something that was new to those individuals. I was involved in mergers and acquisitions. I helped a business downsize by about 500 people. I was actually tasked as the project manager for that, where I had to travel to different locations, literally sit in front of people and say, "I'm sorry, you no longer have a job, but here are the reasons as to why." So really,
Hmm.
all of those experiences, they need to be demonstrated, they need to be showcased for others, then they can to others, so they can contact you and say, "Hey, Armin, we are running into this challenge, can you come and help us?" And then I can draw back from those experiences and say, "Yeah, absolutely, here's what I can do." Speaking of the um, leveraging what we know, have you seen the movie The Pursuit of Happiness?
Yes. Will
Okay.
Smith.
Yeah, it's a great movie, right? Because in there, you really see, it shows how resilience and unconventional approaches can open doors for us,
Yeah.
right? Um, did that make sense?
Totally.
Okay.
In the past, just before this time of so much technology, maybe some of our listeners not were not even born yet. I used to knock the doors of the
Oh yeah.
offices, like just because you mentioned about the movie, the Pursuit of Happiness. Uh, there's so many times, like back then, I was so young. I think I was like 18 years old, but I really wanted to get a job. I wanted to, I just put myself out there. I was just going straight to those commercial buildings where I knew that was like all the offices.
I
And
remember
I
those.
was
Yeah.
just knocking the door and handling my resumes. And you know what? I got at least 3 jobs doing that, because that time we didn't have all of these things nowadays. But I think it's the attitude, right? It's really that resilience. And many times they were just closing the doors or maybe reporting the security. Hey, there's someone knocking the door handling
Yeah.
resumes here.
Yeah, that's actually a great story, and I completely agree. Are you okay if I share a quick story with you?
Absolutely, yes.
Okay, so this is a real story. I was 15 years old, barely spoke English, and I wanted a bike. And I went to my dad and said, "Hey, Dad, I want a bike. I want to ride to school and ride back home." And he looked at me. He said, "If you want a bike, go get a job." Right? I said, okay. And the next day, I kid you not, I went ahead and I walked to the nearest McDonald's. And I actually wrote an article about this story on my LinkedIn. One of the articles, actually, if you look back, you'll find it. And it's how grateful I am to McDonald's for giving me that very opportunity. So I walked into McDonald's and I went to the counter and I couldn't speak English. So I went to they used to call it the window. I went to the window and I said, job. And they looked at me like, what? And I said, job. And
Wow.
to get rid of me, because I was very persevere, I was determined to get that job, right? And they went to the back, and one of the crew chiefs, they used to call them, they called the manager over. The manager came back to the front, and his name was Pradeep, and I'm ever so grateful to him. He took me outside. He gave me an application. I couldn't fill it up because I couldn't speak English or read English that well,
Wow.
but I did my best, right? So I filled up the application on paper with a pen. I gave it to him right in front of him, and he looked at me. He said, "Do you speak English?" And I said, "No." He said, "No English, no job." And I said, "Job." And he said, "No English, no job." And I said, "Okay." So I left, and this is a true story. My kids still laugh at it when I tell this story. So I went home, and the next day I actually walked in to make the same McDonald's. I opened the door to where the kitchen was, and I walked right in. Now, what happened is people that saw me there, they thought that my interview with Pradeep the day before, it actually went really well. So they were under the assumption that I was hired by McDonald's. So they took me to the back, they gave me a uniform, but they
Oh my
couldn't,
goodness.
but Purdy was off on that day. So they couldn't figure out where to put me. So they gave me a cloth and a mop and a broom. And they asked me to work in the lobby. And I worked in the lobby. I worked in the lobby for 6 months. Now, what's funny about this is
You got the job.
I got the job, but what was interesting was Pardeep's reaction because
Mm.
Pardeep showed up 2 days later after his days off and he saw the lobby, how clean it was and how shiny the toilets were. This is honest truth.
Wow.
And he looked at me and he said, "Job?" And I said, "Job." And he said, "It's yours." And that's how I started at McDonald's. So speaking of, going knocking on doors, I have done that as well. And I encourage everyone, don't let anything stop you. Now, I don't encourage people to go into offices and start working when they don't
Nowadays,
have
we
a
have so
job.
many other tools.
E-
Yeah. But
Exactly,
yes, that's the
exactly. But
concept for
that
sure.
was my first job in Canada, and I'm very grateful to my dad for forcing me to go get a job, and grateful to Pradeep for not firing me on the spot. But then again, I didn't really give him much of a choice after he saw the how clean the lobby was.
That's amazing, Armin. Thank you
Thank
so
you.
much for
Please.
sharing that. That's beautiful. That
Thank you.
is determination. Can we call that? That's right. You're determined. Like, job. That's all I want, and I will do what I'll do what it takes to do what's needed, right? And you're adding value. Like you did something at your best, and they could see you were doing your best.
Thank you.
Wow, that's
Thank you.
amazing.
Yeah, it's I love sharing that story.
That's awesome. Yeah, it just came to mind as you were talking about those things. I just took me back to when I was 18.
Hmm.
There's another thing I wanted to mention as you were talking as well about all the experience that we go through, as trials working for different organizations, as you mentioned, especially in Vancouver, so many other cities that we have so many startups. That is such learning lesson for us to know what not to do.
Hmm.
I think I always encourage professionals to, regardless their role and what they do, it's always to really learn about the company and the strategy of the company. I think it's kind of like so normal for us. It's part of our daily basis because we are from HR, but it is very important that all the professionals, they are tuned into what's going on because whenever things happens, if they go through any type of if the company needs to shut down or anything, that is just a great learning opportunity for the professionals to know what happened. Like what should not do, or they can just bring all of that experience, like you mentioned, like, when you're working with different companies now, you know what to do, and you also know what not to do because you have seen what happened in the past.
Exactly. Exactly. That's what defines us as humans, right? And um, it really, when I look back at my own career and my own growth, um, a lot of great things happened in my life. I definitely feel very blessed and grateful for that. But I didn't necessarily learn from the great things that happened in my life. It was the mistakes that I made. It was the failures, quote unquote failures that I experienced that taught me not to do something a certain way because I learned what the consequences. We're often told, every action has a reaction.
Yes.
Well, what do we learn from those reactions, right? If I'm gonna, punch myself in the nose when I'm boxing, next time I learn to hold my fist a little bit more forward or duck,
Hmm.
right? So exactly. So really, that's what it is, and I'm equally, if not more, grateful for those challenges, mistakes, and failures that I experienced in life that for when I am today.
Yeah, for sure. Well, just switching the gears here a little bit and
Mhm.
talking more about the senior level of talents, because that's another thing that I know you hold so much knowledge about it. In your experience working with the executive and senior talent, what are the
Mhm.
non-negotiables that you see in professionals who consistently land top roles? And how can the
Yeah.
mid-level professionals start building those habits? I love this topic as well.
Yeah, so do I, and I promise that my list on this one is not going to be as long as my last one. So I'll give you that much. I, when I think about senior um, executives or senior members of an organization, and I do bring a lot of what I have observed in my wife's personality traits into this piece. Um, I think senior leaders articulate a clear vision and influence decision making. That to me, that's the most important piece of uh, being in a senior position. It's non-negotiable. You have to be able to share what your intentions are, be able to communicate that clearly, and tell others what the vision is, right? It could be good or bad, right? That's not the point. It's how do we communicate that? Actually, you know what? That brings up a story to my mind, and as I mentioned, I love stories. Um, so if you don't mind, I'll share this one with you. I used to work for one of the largest semiconductor companies, really pioneers. We had offices in Palo Alto, Vancouver, and we had a global customer base. Um, After about a couple of decades in business, we faced major financial challenges, and it was very clear that it was putting a lot of pressure on the organization to continue the growth that they were expecting, because really the competition was high. The cost of silicon for chips was getting a lot more expensive to be incorporated into the computers, etc. So I still remember the VP of HR, who actually came from an operations background and not HR background, which to me that was really important. I remember him standing before the entire organization, both in person and online, and explained our situation with complete honesty and integrity, right? It was a tough conversation for him to stand in front of others. And I was standing at the very back of the room that where most of the HR folks were standing, and I was observing everyone that was in the room and on TV screens. And I noticed that by the end of his talk, everyone nodded in agreement. They fully understood where the company was, what challenges we were facing, and the reason behind the hard decision of laying off 50% of our workforce,
Mm.
right? So when you think about that, and when I look back at it, it's really all about articulating and communicating a clear vision. And in this case, the VP of HR was able to convince that for the greater good of the organization and to save 50% of the employees, we had to let go of 50% of our employees, right? So to me, that was absolutely an amazing experience. Um, as I'm talking, actually, I just thought about something else that's to me is non-negotiable for professionals at the senior level. They understand how their role impacts everything within the organization, be it revenue, strategy, operations. They really have a 30,000 feet view. Is it feet or foot? And anyways, it's 30,000 feet to me. They have a 30,000 feet view of the entire organization and where their role falls. What is that
Yeah.
one single island that they're looking down at and say, okay, that's me, but this is how my little island is going to impact the rest of the organization, quote unquote, Earth. Um, you know, they own their decisions. Even when they're difficult or unpopular, they own it. It's theirs, and they take accountability and ownership of that, and they also embrace challenges. They don't avoid it, right? They don't
Yeah.
avoid challenges. They say, you know what, it's coming, and I'm willing to take it. Um, you know, a bit of a self promotion here, but when I started Scalable HR nearly 8 years ago, actually at the end of this month, will be 8 years. Oh, today is the end of the month. Oh, today
Yes.
is 8 years. Um,
Oh,
on
congratulations.
Yeah, thank
Wow.
you. Yeah,
No, we need
um,
to celebrate those milestones.
we should. Thank you. Uh, I didn't. I never foresaw the success of the organization. But that was partially my fault as somebody who just started a business, right? But
Hmm.
looking back at it over the years, there have been a lot of challenges. I mean, just to give you an example, since 2017, we had financial crisis, we had COVID, now we are dealing with tariff issues, right? Those are all business challenges. But
Yeah.
the question is, how do we then tackle those?
Yeah.
We
How
know
do you
they're coming.
respond to that?
Exactly. So when I look back at COVID era, one of the blessings that we experienced as an organization was learning how to pivot quickly, right? Because we knew our companies are not going to hire. So on the spot, we pretty much had to pivot and say, okay, where can we put our focus on? And we immediately went to immigration, and we immediately went to downsizing, helping companies downsize. We went, and one of the saviors of the company was really to focus on how do we train employees to work from home, because we had experience with that. So how do we get others to learn how to operate remotely? And that never mind, um, it grew our business, and I'm partially grateful, not for COVID, because I definitely don't want to go through those periods, but it helped the company grow, right? And that, to me, that was a fantastic thing. When we were talking about the non-negotiables, actually, Rachel, have you read the book "The Seven Habits of Highly Effective People" by Stephen Covey?
Yeah, long time ago. I should read again. I think we
Yeah,
should read that every year.
I was just going to tell you, honestly, it's my go-to book whenever I need a quick refresher on why I am on this earth and what my responsibilities are. I think it's a must-read for professionals who really are looking to excel in leadership and influence. But for me, it sits right on my bookshelf, reachable, and whenever I feel like, okay, I need a positive reinforcement as to why am I doing what I'm doing and what impact it will have, that's the book that I go to. And there are smaller versions of it as well, right, which kind of highlights very quickly the key points. But to me, that's the book that I highly encourage everyone to take a moment and read.
Yeah, that's a very good one. And definitely I would add the communication piece, especially for, just connecting to what mid-level professionals could start building up in terms of habits, definitely the communication, because as you said, how these top talents portray themselves and how they communicate. And I love when I see the CEOs and like those leaders being able to really articulate what's going on. Like
Yeah.
we are going through challenges all the time, and everyone else across the company, they need to know what's going on and what do I have to prepare for. So when you have professionals that know how to communicate, yeah, when they have that
Empathetic.
empathy for
Yeah.
everyone else, because whenever you're not in a leader in the leadership position, you have so many people, so many lives that rely on your success, in your company success. It's really good when they are transparent and they know
Yeah.
how to really share that information in a way that gives you some comfort. Sometimes they have to share the hard truth, but you just know that you just trust them that they're doing the best, and whatever decision they're taking, it's really based on fact. And I think this is how, also we can talk about leadership another time, but that's how you get to have so many people really supporting you even though your
Yes.
company is going through hard times.
That's actually a fantastic point, which I neglected to mention. You're absolutely right. Empathy. It is so important, and it's not to say that you have to the executives or the people in leadership positions, they have to take on the world and put it on their shoulders. It's not that at all, but it's really having that understanding what the rest of the world and the rest of the employees and the organization is feeling, and being able to pivot and change the messaging, the communication to suit the greater public that are the audience or the employees or team members, whatever. You're absolutely right, and I yeah, that's a very good point. Empathy.
Yeah. Well, Arm, it's been so great, Armin. I would be talking here, but I unfortunately we don't have those like 3 hours podcasts yet. I think just before we were just coming down to the end. I always like to ask my guests about. We talked about so many good advice and great insights here, but is there anything else that you would like to leave as a piece of advice, or anything else that comes to mind now to leave with our audience today?
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. Thank you. If I would have to say some of the key takeaways, be dynamic, be proactive in learning, networking, be adaptable, uh, really understanding that the best opportunities go to those who position themselves well. Um, and treat your career like a business. I mean, you're the CEO of you, right?
Yes.
And nobody knows you better than you. Be uh, having that inner understanding of who we are, what are our limitations, where do I need to develop myself. um, that reminds me, actually, as you can tell, I love watching movies, but you watch the movie Jerry Maguire by any chance?
Mm.
No,
No, I don't think
that's
so.
okay. No, I highly encourage you to watch it. It's a fantastic movie, and really a great example of how we can take control of the careers and the personal brand, and not always having to rely on somebody else to do that for us. To say, hey, you know what, Armin, I think you're great at this. Well, let's take some ownership on that as well.
Yes. Yes. Amazing. Be the CEO of your own life,
Yeah.
if we can say.
Yeah, both personally and professionally. It doesn't have to be
Yeah.
limited to one or the other, right? I mean, we are one person, and a lot of times, unfortunately, professional and personal lives kind of overlap, a very blurry line. So really understanding that, I am the CEO of me, and what can I do? So continuous learning, adaptability, I think to me those are probably the two most important pieces, but being also dynamic and willing to evolve.
Yeah. Totally. Totally agree. That's amazing. Armin, thank you so much. It's been amazing. I really enjoyed our conversation. Thank you so much for sharing so much insight. I think we'll need to have a podcast number two, huh? We'll have
We
to.
we gotta do it again, and maybe with a coffee next time, eh?
There we go. There we go.
Thank you so much for giving me the opportunity to sit in and be a guest on your great show. I really appreciate it.
Thank you. Well, and thank you all for staying with us all the way here. So I hope you liked our conversation as well. And if you have other questions, if you would like to hear more about it, and if there anything else that we were talking as you were listening to our conversation and something came to mind that you would like to learn more about it, feel free to leave in the comments. We can always look into this and create another episode really tackling those topics that you guys would like to hear more about it. And all the links will be linked here on our description. Armin was just mentioning so many movies and materials and resources. That's amazing. His contact will be listed here on our description as well. So you can also contact him directly and have access to all of these beautiful resources. We will come back next week with another amazing episode. And until then, stay driven.
Stay driven.